Good evening, everyone, distinguished guests and colleagues. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you to our panel tonight on the topic of bridging the innovation divide. Hosted right here at the Melbourne Connect. For those who are new here, Melbourne Connect is our purpose-built innovation precinct seeking to promote collaboration across boundaries of university, industry, government, and not-for-profits. My name is Thas Nirmalathas. I'm the Dean of Faculty of Engineering and IT at the University of Melbourne. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you and be the moderator for tonight's panel discussion. So this event is actually a part of the annual Melbourne Connect Innovation Week, a 5-day festival exploring cutting-edge solutions to some of the society's most pressing problems and challenges. Innovation Week explores advancements in artificial intelligence, biomedical breakthroughs, entrepreneurship, innovation, and more. But before we get started, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gathered today here, the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung and Bunurong peoples. We recognize Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the original custodians of these lands and waterways, with histories spanning more than 60,000 years. We recognize that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as Australia's first scientists, engineers, and innovators. We honor their enduring cultural practices, pay respect to elders past, present, and future, and recognize the value of Indigenous knowledge within the academy. I pay respect to any Indigenous colleagues who may be joining us today. So before we start the panel discussion, we have some housekeeping matters. For your awareness, this event is being filmed and will be posted on the Melbourne Connect Innovation Week YouTube channel after the event. In the unlikely event we need to evacuate the venue, please proceed through the doors behind and towards the emergency exits, and you will be guided by the organizers. We can see our program for this event on this slide, and including our panel discussion and an opportunity to ask questions from our panelists. During there will be an audio Q&A, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions from the floor. But we also have the option to lodge questions online using Slido, and simply scan the code, and you can start lodging questions through your browser. But if you're a regular Slido person, then you can log in and then enter the code. You would be able to get into our session details. And I really encourage you to lodge questions and vote the questions so we can actually be a bit more democratic in presenting the questions to our panelists. You will be able to see the questions posted by others and just basically give the thumbs up, so that will increase the score and the popularity of the question so we can prioritize. As we start the panel session, within and beyond the Faculty of Engineering and IT, we foster a wide range of activities encouraging creativity, entrepreneurship, and innovation among our academic community here at the University of Melbourne. To help set the scene for our panel discussion, I would now like to place some spotlight on some of our programs by sharing this brief video.
How can we work together to translate research into impact? Impact that benefits our community. puts innovation into action, and drives change in real-world settings at scale. At the University of Melbourne, we're developing the next generation of change makers. Through our entrepreneurial and accelerator programs, our researchers are developing solutions to some of the world's biggest challenges, working hand in hand with industry and government to bring critical breakthroughs where they are most needed. Only by working together can we bridge the innovation divide.
Now I'd like to really invite our panelists onto the stage. Mr. Mark Sanders, Chief Architect, Telstra. Dr. Martha Dombrain, Executive Director and Head of Global Research Innovation, CSL. Ms. Kath Smith, Industry Engagement Manager, Industry Capability Network, Victoria. Thanks, Kath. Professor Alastair Sloan, Pro Vice Chancellor, Research Collaboration, the University of Melbourne. So the panel session is going to be, I'm going to be asking a few questions to the panels, and then basically I invite all the panelists to feel free to contribute if you feel there is an angle that you would like to play. But initially we'll really take one by one to really find out who you are and what you're doing. So Mark, let me start with you. Tell me about your role at Telstra, Chief Architect, what it is.
Yep, right. Thanks. Great to be here, first of all. Looking forward to the next hour. So I'm Telstra's Chief Architect. Best way to describe it is we invest close to $2 billion of investment in technology every year. We play a major role for our customers, but also the nation of Australia, and we've got a strong DNA and a strong heritage supporting Australia. But my job is to really think of the technology town plan. How does all the technology, all the investment, all come together and all fit well? We have in the past, we would often build very vertically orientated solutions. We would have a lot of complexity in our business. We would have a multitude of products across a multitude of customer segments and a huge array of different technologies in our network. Very complex, very hard for us to innovate, very hard for us to meet the evolving needs of the business and the customers that we want to serve. And so my role as a Chief Architect is to build a fundamentally different plan, how all this technology is going to fit together. We call it a composable architecture. We model all of the technology across the organisation, across our network, cloud, data, our IT landscape, and we try and build the overall plan around how it's all going to fit together, put the innovation into our product owners and sales teams around how they can really experiment and come up with great new products to serve our customers and see us into the future. More recently, I've taken on, I'm not sure if you can hear me okay, but a second role. We are a connectivity business, networking company, and I've taken on a second role, which maybe we'll talk about a bit tonight, around an autonomous network. So a very bold ambition for 2030, where we just announced our company strategy around how we want our networks and our people that build and operate these networks and design them to work fundamentally different, and how our customers are going to use that network very, very different. And we call it an autonomous network. So Chief Architect and Head of Autonomous Network.
Really exciting. But you really painted the picture of how you empowering innovation for your clients to succeed. But you also need innovation in order to succeed in building the network that you described. How are you approaching the innovation within Telstra?
Look, the innovation, I think, comes from a couple ones. First of all, having a very strong, bold, forward-looking vision. It's a great time to be involved in technology and a technologist. We've got this amazing disruption occurring in AI and what it represents at the moment. You know, we as a company have gone through over 100 and whatever years of history, many disruptive technologies, and we've always embraced them, been at the leading edge for them. So how we're doing it, we set a bold vision. We actually use words like disrupting the status quo in how we work and how we form our meetings and how we build our strategies. We then step right back, I think, in the moment and figure out how we are going to experiment and achieve those goals for that longer term vision and how we're going to get there. But really it's about a healthy tension between trying to operate the business day to day and achieving our goals and delighting our customers, but also the tension around how we need to step back and put the deliberate time into changing direction, changing technology and changing how we need to work. But around all that, there's a whole story of change management, culture, mindset, skills of our people that sit behind it.
There's a lot to unpack. I will come back to you. Let me move to Martha. CSL is a kind of leading company globally. And what describe your role within that,
Great. Well, thank you for having me, and it's great to see everyone here. I'm Marta Dombrain. I head up the Global Research Innovation Group at CSL. So what does that mean? So my team are focused on preclinical discovery through to preclinical stage opportunity. So we are at the very earliest phase of innovation, 10 to 15 years away from patients. But what we're doing is working closely with universities and academic researchers and startups around the globe to try and identify what might be the next generation of therapeutics, and then working together to really try and accelerate those discoveries toward clinic. So we're predominantly focused on rare diseases, and we operate across 5 different therapeutic areas, including vaccines. And we set the strategy within the organisation around where's the greatest unmet need for patients, what solutions do we need to be thinking about bringing to patients, and then we go out to look for those innovations. So we do that globally, and it's a very rewarding and very exciting role.
Yeah. So you described quite a complex portfolio of areas. So how do you manage that complexity of innovation across that portfolio of activities?
It is challenging, especially when it is global. So there aren't a lot of boundaries, and you really do have to go where the best innovation is. In terms of defining the areas we work in, so we work across immunology, cardiovascular and renal disease, hematology, transplantation, and vaccines. And so within those areas, we have specific focus areas, typically diseases or pathomechanisms, problems that we want to solve. So it's really, as I said, really understanding what is the unmet need, what is really going to be transformative for patients. And that's what guides us in the solutions that we're looking for. I think Mark picked up on the word disruption. So disruption is something we talk about a lot at CSL as well. And I think it's really important that you can't be afraid to disrupt yourselves. And so we've got lots of examples, and maybe I can just give one quick example of we've continually disrupted ourselves. And of course that means a product that you have marketed is going to have be less attractive because you're bringing something else that's going to disrupt that. But that's what transforms patient health and patient lives. So in the space of haemophilia B, we've been working on haemophilia B for decades, probably close to 100 years. We made one of the first plasma-derived therapies for haemophilia B patients. We then developed a recombinant-based factor IX product that was long-acting for haemophilia B patients, so enabling them to go from 2 to 3 times per week IV infusions to one infusion every 2 or 3 weeks, in some cases 4. But we didn't stop there. We then worked and partnered with Unicure to bring the first gene therapy for haemophilia B patients to market. And so that then provides patients who want to go down that path to potentially have a one-and-done cure.
Thank you, Marta. But in that kind of context, really, how do you support, how does the kind of the innovation empowers, and how do you kind of keep track of that in the complex global operations across the portfolio? You gave us one example. How do you kind of, as an organization, how do you systematically kind of enable that function?
Yeah, so for early stage innovation and external partnerships, because that's where I'm focused, one of the models we use, we run an initiative that's called the Research Acceleration Initiative, and this is focused on discovery-based science, where we're looking for academic researchers who are experts in an area of biology. And we believe that area of biology could have an impact in disease, and so we want to work together with them to try and validate that hypothesis and translate those discoveries. And so, in working, we've partnered with, I think, close to 40 researchers over the past 4 years through that program. And the way that we sort of keep in touch, and because innovation doesn't work by handing over a check and saying, see you in 2 years, show me the data when you're done. That's not how it works. It really needs to be two-way. So we've managed to scale that by choosing scientists from our research organisation who have the right expertise and marrying them up with our external collaborators. And they will connect at least once every 3 months to make sure that the program's on track, but also that we're setting industry-based milestones. We're working out what should the right experiments be that we need to do to de-risk this program, and so we're doing that very much hand in hand.
Thank you. I'll come back to you to really dive deeper into some of the things, but I might just shift focus to Kath. You in a very slightly different, not only kind of you have to be innovative, but you enabling innovative through the people who in your network. So could you describe your role within the Industry Capability Network, Victoria?
Thanks, Thas, and thank you for having me today. I feel I work very much superficially compared to everybody else on the panel here, probably in the room. But I work in procurement. That's probably the best way to describe. So when you were talking about impact in the video, impact to me means procurement. So it's in the supply chain, it's being adopted, it's being commercialized. And so my background has been in federal government, I suppose a bureaucrat background with industry policy and innovation policy, and trying to keep as much innovation and commercialise as much innovation and that entire value chain in Australia. So I started in federal government, predominantly in the mining sector, trying to maximise local content and procurement and innovation there. And moved to really advocating at the Victorian Chamber for SMEs, so much smaller organisations who want access to innovation or who are innovating, and connecting them into bigger projects who can take that to market. And now in my role at Industry Capability Network, it's very much that connection piece. We're a matchmaker. So Industry Capability Network we're not government, we are a non-for-profit organisation that is funded by the Victorian government to implement their local jobs first policy and maximise local content in any new build. And the policy says any investment more than $1 million in regional Victoria or $3 million in Metro Melbourne, there is an expectation that you will buy local, and you can't buy much for more than $1 million, for less than $1 million now. So it applies to a lot of Victorian government procurement and grants. My team works on the more complex side of those, where there's actually a local content target set. So over $50 million if you build a new hospital, for example, New Melton Hospital or Suburban Rail Loop or North East Link, there'll actually be a local content target set. And sometimes that's easier in more established industries, but we also work in the renewable sector, which is an emerging sector. So you're looking at new innovations and new businesses coming through, and helping the government set a target that will help grow the sector in Australia, but is also achievable to meet those targets that they have for net zero or whatever delivery targets they have. So my team are all engineers themselves, and I'm not the only non-engineer in my team, to help make those connections. And I see a lot of innovation in a lot of the businesses that we work with, particularly small and medium-sized businesses that are struggling to connect in. And I've seen some really great examples of where it can work, and I've seen some really areas that we can improve, which I was just talking to particularly in medtech, where there's real opportunity, where a lot of the businesses that we work with often commercialize offshore first and find it easier to sell internationally than they do locally to our huge big builds and investments that we have here.
Really, I think you touched on a number of key things from a policy dimension. I mean, you captured Australia is largest industry representation has come from small to medium enterprises. So you play a matchmaking role, but then you also kind of put the spotlight on how government procurement kind of policies and strategies could empower local innovation. Could you kind of talk a little bit about some examples or how the key decision by government on local procurement kind of triggers innovation opportunities locally?
So where I play a role, so there's no, at the moment from an innovation landscape, there's no procurement policy that focuses on that. But where we get involved from an innovation point of view, when we're seeing a lot of innovation being adopted and real opportunities to bridge that divide, is in the sustainability space and the ESG and circular economy space. So a lot of the big build, so Northeast Link is a great example of where they've got really ambitious sustainability targets that have to be met. And through that, the only way they're going to meet those sustainability targets are through innovative products. And a great example, which I will be honest that I didn't realise was Melbourne Uni, so I was pleasantly surprised when I went and researched it this afternoon, was a great example was Boral. Boral is working with Spark, who's digging the tunnel in between the two roads, and they are using crushed up damaged solar panels to create the sand within the cement, and they're using that as a trial site as part of the Northeast Link to trial that technology. Which can then meet their targets, but also all the local content and the circular economy piece. But those sorts of projects are providing that test bed, and those procurement policies are providing those test bed for those, in this case, not so small businesses, but it can be smaller businesses to really test their products and services and bring them to market. But more can be done, absolutely.
Thank you. Let me get to Alistair, who's been patiently waiting to see how your role as a Pro-Vice Chancellor, collaboration and partnership. And can you give us a kind of idea of what's your role at University of Melbourne?
Well, thanks, Thas, and thanks for the invite to be here with this great panel. The easiest way to describe my role probably is that I am here to grease the wheels of connection between academics, industry, city, government, not-for-profits. So people that want to either work with the university, with our researchers, with our students, that have got great ideas where that can be translated into something that has impact, and I'll come back to impact in a moment, but also where actually we have got great ideas, we want to translate that out, and we need people that have got different skill sets than we've got. And we have that all over the landscape, all over the environment of the university. We have phenomenally talented undergraduate students who've got great research ideas. We have great PhD students that are the same, and researchers that have got something they want to do differently. They need to unlock the door of where they go from lab to policy, lab to a patient, lab to clinic, whatever that might be. So my job is to find that and drive that collaborative partnership agenda. Some of it is working with our colleagues in research, innovation, and commercial. So how do we commercialize some of that? How do we really spin some of these ideas out? And we have great examples in this very building. But one of the biggest things I want to do in my time, when my vision for the role, and I've been reimagining it over the last sort of 6 to 8 months, is where we are open to be a partner for industry, not-for-profits, anybody out there that has got problems, has got challenges, but want to come and work with the great minds that we have at the university. So we help solve other people's challenges, because impact is what we should all be about. Even if you're doing research that might be at what we call the discovery level, it still will have an impact somewhere down the line. And that impact is making a difference to people's lives at any level. And that's probably my job in a nutshell. It's greasing the wheels and connecting people.
As a greasing expert, you spent the entire career greasing. So, can you give us some examples from your own career where the innovation had been really significant?
Yeah, I probably got the job, one of the few jobs in the university I probably wanted in terms of the provice, the sort of level that I'm currently at now. Most of my academic career has been working with industry, either funded by or funded with industry partners. And that's been small enterprises within the UK when I was based there, national companies, international, global pharma, global oral health companies, and not-for-profits and government. So if any of you go to a dental surgery and you see a big sign for tooth whitening, the wonderful stuff you can get, first of all, don't believe the marketing. You're not going to get really, really beautiful, bright white teeth unless you have veneers. So whitening won't do that, but you'll see this thing called Zoom whitening. That's Philips Oral Health. They bought that company from the US back in about 2010, 2011. So between 2012 until I left the UK in 2020, and then just beyond, the relationship we had was for over 10 years. We did all the efficacy work on the potential risk of that peroxide and blue light on the soft tissues of the mouth. Now, then, what you get, and for anyone that's watching online, that's a researcher that thinks, well, working with a company, they own everything. Correct. Philips did own that. But we actually made sure that could get from being a company that Philips bought that had great potential to getting it now into dental offices here and around the world. And whilst we didn't publish too much in that space, we have had impact of the research that several postdocs and PhD students did. That's probably the best one. Renshaw is the other one. We had an 8-year relationship with Renshaw, funded by the UK government, something called a knowledge transfer partnership. And we work with the medical and dental products division, and they build 3D printing machines for titanium and cobalt chrome. And they wanted to work with us to look at different geometries when you 3D print titanium for hips, knees, and dental implants. And that was an 8-year relationship, 2 PhDs, number of publications, some great other discovery academic ideas that went off on a different tangent, but also employability for the postdocs that worked on those projects.
Well, you got the mic. I might shift the gear now to really talk a little bit about your organization and how that is, dealing with innovation and what are the parameters in which you kind of approach that. So on that context, you've been part of University of Melbourne's recent research strategy launch, Advancing Research 2030. And I think in there you articulate a concept of impact accelerators. What is Impact Accelerator? What are you planning to do, and how university is going to tackle that?
So I'm going to switch the word around. Impact Accelerator describes a something, but actually what it will be and what it should be is accelerating impact, an enabling environment, an enabling landscape. So what we're thinking in my mind is that where have we got all the different parts of a jigsaw together that actually takes something from an idea or something that is actually bubbling along to actually having a direct result to influence a human being, influence the public or the communities that we as a university serve. And that means there's multiple parts to that jig. So there's the researchers and the academics at the university and this interdisciplinarity that comes from that. So connecting it across different departments, different areas of research. Do we have the right skills, the right people working together to look at a big challenge? And then do we have the right partners out there that they are working with? Are we actually talking to Martha? Are we talking to other companies saying, well, not if we got this one, but letting people know what we're doing so that Martha goes, we should be talking to that group there. And it opens the door. So with that, we need some help. And that comes from our research innovation and commercialization division with our business development and looking more at a broader sector. So we have that angle to it. And then we also have our aspects of philanthropy, looking for people that want to pump prime a lot of this work because it will make a difference to people's lives. So to do that, we will be reimagining what the seed funding and the sapling funding would look like that gives these ideas a turbo boost. So it's an enabling environment rather than a something. But ultimately, what we really want are the right bits of that jigsaw coming together to allow people to be creative, and that creative ideas and juices to be able to be mapped through that landscape to drive impact.
Thank you. I might just move to Mate, given that the connection. I think you earlier mentioned about some of the models that you've been using, like research exchange development and within the industry initiative. What do you really look for in that kind of partners? And as you start to work, how do you go about, this is the right partner, this is the right problem, and how are we going to go about doing it? Yeah.
It sounds simple,
Yes.
but it's very challenging. So what we're looking for is a compelling rationale. Why is your discovery or innovation going to be better than standard of care or anything else in development? That's the number one question we're trying to answer. And so that's why when we run these types of initiatives, we start with 300 words, because that's all you need to try and convince somebody that that's actually what you're doing. It is very difficult, though, I think, for people to often think beyond. When we think about the competitive landscape, people might look at other things that are targeting the specific target they're working on, but ignore the rest of the therapeutics, for example, that are being explored for that particular disease segment. And so there's looking at the innovation in isolation, and so it's really about putting it into the entire context and really trying to find those breakthrough transformational opportunities.
Thank you. I might shift to Mark. You briefly mentioned that you are leading a major strategic focus for Telstra Shift. I think you call it Connected Future 30 strategy. Can you tell us a little bit about that strategy and how that is going to be transformational in the networking architectural context?
Yeah, so look, with the advent of AI, we see that connectivity is going to just continue to grow. All customers across any segment, they're going to need more connectivity, needs to be more predictable, more resilient, more optimized, more self-adjusting. And our customers in the next 3, 4, 5 years are going to want to interact with connectivity in all parts of their businesses, all parts of their lives, and it already is fundamental to how the country operates, but it's going to be even more so. Those businesses want to interact with our network through APIs and programmatically and through their own agents and AI. They'll want it more integrated into their business. They'll have their models being inferenced at different parts of the network. And so Connected Future 30 is our forward-looking strategy. And it sort of starts off with that premise of the importance of the connectivity that's going to have. We use the words more sophisticated connectivity that sits behind it. And our strategy very simply is we're going right back to our really core strength and the core of the network, that great connectivity. And it starts off with the autonomous network I mentioned before, but also considers how we want our customers to interact with it. How do we develop the right business models and the right products to do that? Then ultimately find different ways to sell it and have them engage with it as well and consume that in different commercial models.
Yeah. As you were earlier talking about this strategy, and then how this strategy to some extent is about delivering based on the innovation that you've been building on. But as the strategy rolls out, you see major challenges with new technologies coming in. How are you reaching out to your networks, both locally and globally, to really get that innovation bootstrapped?
Yeah, so it's fair to say that we don't know all the answers. We've got the bold vision, as I said before, and there's a myriad of people. We're also working with universities, people in the room here. Great to catch up with you all. We work with other operators, common shared problems and common collaborations. We work with international standards bodies and standards organisations. It's not just theory, it's not just paper studies. We actually work with them on things we call catalysts and accelerators, and trying to take the theory into real world proof points that we want to take from that. We interact with a lot of partners and suppliers and vendors ourselves, and we're pushing them on their source of innovation and challenging their thinking around some of the technologies they may need to bring to it. I like the word before, enablement. It was a great sort of way, I think, to summarise sort of my role and what we're trying to do inside the organisation. It's sort of, I'm going to leave the grand thinking of perhaps how do we bring it to life for a customer and create a great product to others in the organisation. What we need to do is provide the the enablement for that. What are the missing pieces of the technology? What are the leaps we need to make? How do we get the proof points behind it? And how do we get that technology into the innovators' hands so that they can take it and be creative with it, and be creative with our customers with it?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kat. And if I could come back to you, and as you kind of work with quite a large base of small to medium enterprises, how are they kind of facing the challenge of accessing talent and ideas in order to feed their own innovation, and how your network is kind of working in that context?
So I guess there's multiple parts to that question. The accessing the innovation, I think there's, and the talent, I think obviously we're here at Melbourne Uni, there's a huge opportunity to connect in with the research that is happening. Often, as I said, I tend to work with sub 200 size businesses, employees, so small to medium sized businesses. They're incredibly time poor and often resource poor. So the thought of 100 years of research on one topic, even a couple of hours a week is a big ask for a lot of these companies. But being able to partner and share resources with a university is a great concept, but the practicalities of doing it, I think the pathways to doing that, I think there's a lot of opportunity to clarify what those pathways are. We talked about a no wrong door sort of approach. That's worked well in the past, that I've seen really work well. And accessing that talent, often, like just walking in here, the amount of technology that is sitting behind the glass and being used, whether it's 3D printing, whatever it might be, that is a dream for a lot of these small businesses to have access to, that they would never be able to invest in themselves. So that opportunity for that talent is great and a real opportunity. But then how do they then work with the universities to actually get it to be commercialised? Because ultimately, if it's not procured by the market, there's no really point, because you're all about impact. So the challenges and how we work with those businesses at ICN. So we often find that the design of a project can unintentionally design out potential innovation. So we're doing a lot of work with architects and engineers to ensure that they're not just rinse and repeating. So when they're putting a design in for a new hospital, for example, whatever that may be, there's not just rinse and repeat, and that the designers actually articulate rather than a product, the function that they're looking for. So they're not naming an actual product, which then leaves it open for other innovative suppliers to come in. So that's something that we're working on at the moment with designers and engineers. I will do a quick plug for actually some work we're doing with Melbourne Uni on that on the 16th of September.
You, please. Without any shame. Yeah.
That we're trying to get sustainable building materials. We're bringing a lot of architects in to an event with Melbourne Uni on the 16th of September. And we would love more innovative products to be there to try and open up engineers' eyes and designers' eyes to what is actually manufactured and created here in Victoria, but Australia as well in general. So that's one of the things that is also being legislated as well. There's been a change in legislation recently to really emphasise that, particularly on Victorian government projects. The other thing that we're working on is around getting the certification to be involved in these projects. So an example, which I'm sure it's easier than the PBS for you two, but the hoops that you often have to jump through to meet the requirements of the procuring agency. So Vic Roads is an example. We worked with an amazing company, RPM Pipes in Shepparton, or just outside of Shepparton, Kyabram. They manufacture pipes out of recycled plastic. They spent such a long time trying to get certification through Vic Roads so that could be used for stormwater They were successful for that to be drainage pipes, but that's a long pathway, and that's different. That pathway to certification and how to do that is different in every sector. So we at ICN, we try and help navigate that with some of the businesses so that they don't face that as a hurdle in procurement. And then the other was around supporting with the de-risking of working with the agencies and the projects to identify those test beds of projects such as the Northeast Link that we spoke about, where there's a lot of duplication of the same process. So there's lots of opportunities for trial and error. And to be able to build that into the design and the thinking at the very early stages, because often like suburban rail loop, that's going to be decades long projects. So building that in right now. So that's some of the work that we're doing with ICN to try and incorporate that innovation.
Yeah. Thank you, Kath. And as you were talking, you were looking at Alastair quite often. So I'm going to put this back to Alastair. In your role as research collaboration, trying to help university community work with industry, how do you see the collaboration with small to medium enterprise and large companies like CSL and Telstra? Is there any differences in the way that these organizations approach us for the type of collaborations and type of innovation that we support, the ways in which we are supporting these organizations?
That's a great question because philosophically, no, but the way we receive needs to be very different as a university. And I think Martha and I were just talking before. One of the things that I've learned in my own career is when you're approached by whether it be a startup, a medium enterprise, or a global company, you need to listen, but you actually need to hear what the company is saying, because you might have the answer to some of the problems that they've got, but it won't be the answer that you've been working on yourself for the last 10 years. In fact, I can guarantee you it definitely won't be. But your knowledge, your skills, your experiences from working on whatever it was you were doing has led, a Mark or a Martha to come and knock on your door and say, look, we'd have a conversation with you, please, because we have this challenge. So as academics at every level, whether you're a capstone student, a PhD student, or a level E, group lead, listening but hearing what a company has to say is probably the best thing to do, because the approaches are usually the same. Now, the offerings can be very different because startups don't have very much money, and that might be a case of how can we work together because we can access funding because we're a partnership. The same can be at different levels, but it's listening and hearing what the problem is, what the proposition is, because that opens a huge door then to what could be a great world of creativity and opportunity. And that's why a lot of industry academic collaborations don't get beyond the first step. And that's probably, so my job along with other colleagues is to try and get that influence and that ethos for us of how we respond. It's a great opportunity, but listen and hear what people are saying to you.
Maybe I can just add to that,
please,
picking up on the discussion we had earlier. Too often people are working on, or they have a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And so you don't want to have a solution, a solution looking for a problem. You want to understand the problem first and then develop the solution. And so that's where that active listening really ties in, because it's industry that is out there working at understanding what the global challenges might be, whatever area it is that you work on, those problems that need to be solved. In my area, it's really understanding what are the unmet needs that our patient populations are facing, and then trying to come up with solutions that are going to solve that.
And then the work forward is collaborative. You're working together as a team, and so that's when Martha's role or my role, we might want to try and prime that, turbocharge that, give something to help it work. Is that a secondment in, a secondment out? Is it seed funding? Is it just finding wider connections? But that's when the magic sauce then is that listening and hearing, and then it becomes truly collaborative research.
Can I second that as well? I think from an industry perspective, a small business, that we find that a lot, that we find it hard because we play that matchmaker middle role, and we're often trying to find, we hear the problem and then we go out trying to find this existing set of solutions. But that's such a refreshing perspective to put on it, and it would make our job so much easier, and with that connection to a huge, vast number of businesses. The other thing I would to add to that is you can active listening, but the language that is used, often we see such a mismatch. And I think there's a fair bit of work that could be done on both sides to help prep for that conversation so that you are using the same language.
And finding the common ground.
Yeah.
And that helps you find the common ground.
I was almost going to use that same term, the common ground. I agree with everything that's said here on the listening, the collaboration, the common ground.
An alignment of values and vision. So where are you ultimately wanting to go? Are you both heading to the same direction? Are you wanting to, is it outcomes for patients, or is it publications? You know, what is it?
That's it. And you can have a bit of both. If you look at Clarity and Paul Donnelly's work, if you ever heard Paul speak, he is a absolute card-carrying, phenomenal academic who wants to publish. But he found that with by listening to the investors, people thinking you can spin this out, you can get IP here. He actually manages both very, very well to a very high level. So it's about the common language, and then you have that vision. And what is your shared values? Couldn't agree more.
And shared time frame.
And that varies between academics and business.
Challenge, I think. And endure through those challenges as well, and expectation management.
Absolutely.
So those who are in the panel, just get your questions ready to be coming back to you. So I got a few more questions, and we'll really open up the. So, Mark, Telstra is a household name. Telstra known for very technology, quite early adopters of technology, early creators of technology, but you also need to bring that technology to customers who would really demand more and more quickly. How do you stay ahead of that? And what are the things that really keeps the organization really trying to bring technology ahead of customer needs?
Yeah, so a lot of things, but as I said earlier on at the start, we pride ourselves of being, it's in our DNA to lead that. We expect ourselves to be leading it, whether it's in experience, coverage, speed. It's sort of baked into the culture and the DNA. I think that's first thing for us to consider. Number two is we want to innovate, right? We've done some amazing innovations, and we always set the bar very high and the goals very high. But I think now we're going further than that. We're looking to disrupt, as we said before, and disrupt ourselves, and not being afraid to do that. And there's a difference between disruption and innovation. There's a significant difference, and we do a lot of great sustaining innovation to our current technologies. But when we are seeking to disrupt ourselves or how we want to interact with our customers, we're deliberately setting out to think they want to work differently with us, and internally we need to work differently ourselves. So, and with the advent of AI and its importance, we consider AI on the network, and we're very deliberate around that, and disruption through that. And then there's AI in the network and the disruption that comes with that. And for our customers, we're still trying to figure out what it is they want and what disruption means to them, but we know it's coming and we expect for that. And so we have to have all of our systems and engagement ready to be evolve with those needs. Internally, we have to do all the groundwork too, the technology, the partnerships with academia, but our people, our skills. We need to think, what will a modern network engineer look like in years from now? It'll look quite different to what it is today. So all those things is sort of how we're preparing for it.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Might switch to Alistair. As Australia and other countries really facing significant challenges in both climate change to adapting with technological advances or disruption from technological advances to quite a rising polarization. Where do you see the responsibility of the university through research, through education, how it is tackling some of these things?
That's a really good question, and it allows us, or it should allow us, to rebase what we are as a university and why do we exist. Universities exist to do two things, and then because of that, do a third thing. And in my mind, in my opinion, universities exist to educate and drive research, or do research and educate. That is the core business, the core mission of any higher education institution, any university: teaching and research, research and teaching, education. And because of that, when done well, with the highest quality, with the highest values, ethical, all the values we talk about, that means then we serve communities. And the communities we serve are local, they are national, and they are international. And that's what universities should be doing. And when we look at the challenges that we have globally, and we see the disruption globally, whether it be political, whether it be geopolitical, climate-driven, technology, and we look at what the risks are, but what the opportunities are, universities should be at the center of that high value, high quality serving of communities. And that means we need to listen to what community wants, what our communities, what our populations want. What does society require from a university and from our people and our graduates and our staff? What does the commercial world want from us? What do governments, to a degree, want from us? What do cities, local government, communities want from us? Because we are here to serve those communities. That's what we're there to do. We want to produce the very best graduates, so that Mark finds those network engineers of tomorrow. We want the 300 words that light up Martha when she reads that when they come in. And we want to produce those opening of doors for Cat to make life a lot easier for those big builds where we can find local innovation and local manufacturing that drives things. So we have to come back to what we do. We do education. We are here to educate and do research. And if we do that to the very best of our abilities, then we serve our societies and our communities. And and we're at a time now where we need to be thinking about that, going back to what's our core mission.
Yep.
And I think Melbourne does do that. We're never perfect, but panels like this, weeks like this, allow us to really think, what are we here to do? And that's what I think we're here to do, and that's our purpose.
Mate, I think thank you for your partnership with the university, and I think like our university, you work with a range of universities. As a CSL, and I think it's going through a major transformation, how do you, what is your kind of deliberate approach or strategy in terms of maintaining that links to the universities as, a research institution, both locally and globally, and how you see that changing over the next short time?
Sure. So I see it changing in the most positive of ways. So we know at CSL that some of the best innovation is going to come from outside of our walls. And so my team is a very deliberate and proactive focus on trying to harness and identify some of that innovation. We are only going to do more of that going forward. So we are, as you point out, we're going through a transformation to really make sure that our organisation is structured to ensure that we're investing our shareholders' money in the most efficient way to ensure that we're developing medicines as quickly as possible for the patients that we serve. So in terms of how we're engaging and strengthening relationships with universities across the globe, we're doing that in multiple different ways. We do that locally through the sites in which we work. So obviously across the road from Melbourne University, and so that makes for a fantastic opportunity for exchange and partnership. Nothing beats getting scientists together. You can have people like me out there looking for opportunities, but it's getting scientists together in a room to start workshopping ideas. That's where the real magic happens. So it's through that local engagement. Obviously, we can't be everywhere and we can't be in every country, and I'm sure you've read that we're really consolidating our sites so that we have 6 R&D sites going forward, and that's really important for CSL to make sure that our own staff are being able to collaborate and work together themselves. So we do this through partnering with incubators as well, and accelerators, venture funders, venture capital. So all of these types of organisations have boots on the ground, so to speak. They're out there looking for innovation. our major way that we keep relationships with universities is through tech transfer offices. So my team is a team of 8 people around the world. We can't possibly have one-to-one relationships with all of the researchers that we want to meet. But we do have a network of over 300 universities around the world, and that's predominantly maintained through tech transfer professionals and commercialisation officers, where we're talking to them about the needs that we have, what are the areas, the problems that we're trying to solve, and they're then reaching into their organisations and looking for researchers who are working in those spaces.
You kind of mentioned the accelerators and incubators. UMA Bioincubator is only less than a kilometer from here. Can you tell us a little bit of lessons learned from doing it? What kind of impact that you're seeing out of that kind of activity here locally?
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, GMAR Bioincubator is a startup incubator that's housed in CSL's global headquarters just down the road. It's a partnership between CSL, the University of Melbourne, and the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute. And really, the philosophy is about getting founders and companies outside of the academic environment into an incubator where they're surrounded by other companies, other founders, other entrepreneurs who are trying to commercialise a product. It's about providing not only state-of-the-art facilities, but all of the wraparound services that you might need when you're trying to run a company and you're starting to do that from scratch. Because no more are you just focusing on the science, you're trying to run a business and all of the things that go with that. So it's really about those wraparound services, the training, the commercialisation support, the access to investors, access to services, professional services that you might need. So that's what GMAR's really trying to do. It's the first incubator of its kind in Australia, certainly the first in the precinct, but the first in Australia where a biotech incubator is co-located with a global biopharmaceutical company that has its R&D here onshore. So that's what makes that really special, because you have that opportunity for cross-collaboration as the residents in GMAR can interact with CSL staff, which is fantastic. So it's really, I think, an exciting next step for our ecosystem here, and it's certainly something that I hope we see more of.
Thank you. Mark, you talked a little bit earlier about also experimenting and validating both with clients and your lead technology providers. How is Telstra tackling these kind of incubation and experimentation?
Yeah, very differently to how we used to. So we would, I guess, more traditionally find our major suppliers, and the innovation would be with them, and we would be on very large, big, multi-year transformational builds. And sometimes we do some of that still, but now we very much, with the advent of all this new technology and the rate and pace of the innovation, our ability to adapt on it, we're very much got a term internally called Made in Telstra now, and where we're taking a little bit more of the lead to develop that IP and the capability that's going to set us up for that future. And we aim for much smaller goals. We aim for a much sort of move the needle, really big, high impact change in some form of innovation, and we work with academia and Melbourne University and other organisations on this. But we try and get a proof point. We try and get a very narrow scope, but a very move the needle outcome, big high gain. And it could be we don't have a downtime in our network. So how do we in seconds detect where the fault in a network might be and have it self-heal? And what are the technologies that we need to do behind it? And rather than rolling that out across the whole network, let's find a portion of it and throw some of these new technologies at it. I like the comment there around the collaboration and getting the scientists together, and of course in our case getting some of the amazing skills that the likes of Melbourne University and other academia present, and some of our network engineers and some of our big sort of aspirational people, and you get them in a room and you see some really amazing problem solving come out of that. Really amazing, what if we did this, and what if we attacked this problem this way, and have we thought of doing this? And so you get those sort of clever people with those different sort of backgrounds, experiences, but a common goal, common vision, and you see some amazing things happen with those clever people.
Yeah, very good. Kath, your network and your industry kind of organizations kind of, serve number of Victoria's priority sectors, and how do you see, those industry members can benefit from things like this, and how do you see university and those SMEs interacting in
I might
these
answer
priority
that
areas?
with a sort of a commentary on where I think the demand
Yeah.
for innovation is coming from. And so where I say that problems are and that need to be addressed. And again, through the lens of government investment and where we're looking at. And so renewables, huge, ambitious targets for net zero. With the offshore wind that investments that are happening in Gippsland, with the renewable energy zones kicking off there, with the feasibility licenses being released. The global demand on skills and capabilities and materials for offshore wind is huge, and Australia is such a small player in that environment. So we have got an opportunity, or there's a shortage there, and there's an opportunity for innovation and capabilities to be built. Opportunities there. Linked to that, there is a lot of investment in the resources and critical minerals space, particularly in northern West Victoria at the moment, and they've got a lot of problems with workforce. In that Horsham area, they've got ag tech and agribusiness, huge investments in chip manufacturing for Hungry Jack's is all being done in Horsham by Franz Fritz. So they've got a $400 million investment happening there. They've got abattoirs, they've got mining, they've got renewable energy coming through. They are not going to be able to service that and deliver on that with the people using traditional methods of delivery. So there's huge problems and opportunities there. And then in that ESG and circular economy space, I would say huge opportunities there for innovation to come in and solve problems, for on-time delivery of these projects to meet these targets that are being set.
Thank you. I know there is a long list of questions coming up, and there were a few hands going up earlier. I'm very sorry. I was doing an editorial control over the content just to get them warmed up. Now they're ready to answer any questions. Is there any hands up? There's one here, and then I will do one from Slido, one from Flo, and then please, yeah.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. So I'm head of technology for Infosys Exponential Engineering, which is a newly incubated group in Infosys where 10x development and we are actually doing it at global scale. And the reason why I'm asking this is that we are genuinely now able to do software at a 10th of the price we've ever been able to do it before. And not only is it a 10th of the price, but it's also the things we are doing are so many more levels integrated that it makes the stuff we've ever done before look like child's crayon drawings. Now we're doing massive things that are really, but what I'm saying to you is that, okay, I've got a few questions. If we were to say to you, right, I could give you the best procurement system you've ever imagined in your life at an affordable price, right, what would you do with it?
I don't procure.
But organization of things from locations, where are those? Everyone has all these projects that are just outside of their affordability range that you feel could really make some massive differences. And Marta, like my sister's an early phase biomed as well. And one of the things I've been talking to her about is that what if I could give you back 50% of the time of your most valuable people and reduce the paperwork that you have to do through bringing drugs to market by 75%, what would that enable you to do? All those rare drugs that you've been talking about that you can't get to market because you can't quite afford them, what if you could afford them? And Mark, we deal with you guys, I'm not being sycophantic, but, what if we were to come to you and say, listen, TCP won the reliability race by working when everything else didn't. What about if I can make components and things for you that are so reliable that they're like that? how would you deploy them out to your autonomous networks, and how would that actually make the fabric of reliability and resilience and control really work if you owned that? So I'm interested in the entrepreneurial stuff. Where are the ideas? Where given even we are about to enter a period of time where I can tell you I can deliver software at 10%.
Just might intervene because
What can we
they're
do?
probably at the risk of forgetting the question. So thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
How would you actually enable that from the university's perspective? How could you take that network out? If I could say to you, I can build any network you like, connect the people and manage it, how would that turn into something that would enable the fabric of innovation?
That's a long answer, but I think there is a way of doing that, which actually comes around mapping what you've got to then very simply mapping of where the connections need to be. But that would be an added tool to the box that we need for innovation.
Yeah, quick one, just run through one if anybody wants to respond. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So thank you for the question. I think what you've touched on is what I think about as continuous improvement. So we've got over 30,000 staff at CSL working in multiple different functions. Every single one of those functions is thinking about their business unit and how they do business, or their component that they're contributing to the business, and how to improve the efficiency of that. So what I'm talking about as a whole is drug development and taking new medicines to patients. But within that fabric are all of those things that you touched on. So all of the processes, the things that take up time, how do we take that away? So just to give you an example of something that we've been working on in my team, as you can imagine, we look at hundreds, if not thousands, of opportunities a year. And the time it takes to evaluate those opportunities is significant. If you think about looking at 1,000 opportunities, maybe only 15 of those will result in a collaboration. So the question I'm often asking myself is, how do I ensure that my team's time is focused on those 15 rather than the other 985? And so we've adopted an AI system that helps us now do that, to laser pinpoint into the things that are going to move the needle. So we've wiped hours and hours and hours off what we would spend on those other 985 opportunities.
Very quickly, well, that entrepreneurial type of thinking is exactly what we want to do. But the next step after that is we have a lot of those ideas. So how do you prioritise them? And then two, how do you scale them? That's probably the second part I'd ask you in return, how you'd help us do it. But the sort of that way of thinking, that entrepreneurial growth and what it might represent, absolutely, that's what we want to do. It's sort of how do you prioritise that against a list of them? The return, the benefit, the time, the complexity to deploy, all those sorts of things, and then how do you scale it out?
And I would say de-risk it as well. So there's a lot of the work that the space that I work in is government, and government isn't known necessarily for being pro-risk. And so being able to test it and de-risk it for a small pilot to be able to then deploy it larger.
I have a question from our Slido, probably aimed at Mate and Mark, but I might just say it might have a broader appeal as well. When you're looking for new tech or potential partnerships, what factors influence whether you're partnering with teams or really acquiring a new IP? Is that a consideration, or how do you deal with that?
Sure. For us, it's almost always with teams. So really, we're looking for that expertise, and it's that the marriage of different expertise and that complementarity that really makes innovation and partnerships work. So often when we're thinking about academic partnerships, we're thinking about researchers that have decades of experience in an area of biology. They understand these areas so deeply, whether it's a pathway or a target, an area of biology. We, on the other side, have got decades of experience in developing drugs. And so you bring those two things together, and that's what makes this work. So yes, sometimes you do license IP, and of course there is IP licensing involved in this whole process, but it's the people and the partnership and the collaboration that makes innovation work.
I would agree that last part is the most profound part of it. But Look, there's a lot of complex factors. I think it's not an either or. It's how mature is this idea? What does it mean to the risk factors? How might it grow? How critical it is that we must get this IP quickly. There's a lot of factors in there, but I think we would, depending on the maturity cycle and all those factors, we would explore both options.
Mm-hmm. Kat?
Just want to refine that, right? So what you're talking about is evolutionary change to what you already do. What you're talking about is evolutionary change to what you already do and what you already know. I know when I did my thing, I've spent 2 years developing this, and I had to stop a number of times and go, I'm using the ways I've always done and the methods I'm comfortable with and the things I'm good at, and I have to break that. So let's talk outside of that. The world is going to change. We are doing software at 10. This is going to change things, right? What opportunities come from that change, and how do we do things differently? Because the value, the cost, the actual, when you plan out how to deliver a drug to market, you've got your plan, you've got it all laid out. All those costs have changed now, and because they've all changed, it means things that used to be important aren't, and things that never used to be important are. What does that new shape look like? And what are the innovative opportunities? Because people are there already. We're talking to companies at global scale doing this stuff, right? They're there already. How do we get there too? Because the gap is considerable. And if we're not there too, we will be left behind. So, my challenge is where do we disrupt? How do we do things different? Australia digs most of its dirt out and sends it overseas. What if we were to get some of that and do some manufacturing? Drugs, like I said, where's that real opportunity space?
Yep. Thank you. I think we've got other questions, and we wanted to raise come back, I think. Alastair, you started with saying that you've been greasing the wheels. But the question is, what is the biggest barrier that you face in supporting this university academia collaboration?
Multiple. Sometimes it's what we've been talking about, thinking about doing something differently, which is what we've just heard. Having something that you're wedded to, and actually that's not what a collaborating company actually wants. So the barrier sometimes is a slight change in mindset. And the other barrier is taking the risk. Academics don't always take lots of risk. Now, we're lucky we've got, with the entrepreneurial center and all, and the programs we've got a great track record in driving entrepreneurship throughout certainly our researchers at the university, and that's growing and growing. But we have to be able to take a risk. And when I look at colleagues that are working in industry, that's what our industry colleagues will do. Certainly in my broader field of biomedtech and Telstra, same with CSL. And you might fail. And what happens is you dust yourself off and you go again. Now, I appreciate that in the university landscape, certainly the big traditional universities here, the US, the UK, career advancement doesn't always align with taking a risk and failing. So sometimes I think part of my job over the next few years in my role, as we look at this acceleration of impact, the other big job I've got is to try and drive the changing culture of the university, not sometimes our researchers and our colleagues, but taking a risk is good. Failure is not failing, it's learning. And actually, are we listening to that? Are we learning from that? And are we then connecting with the industries going forward? So the barrier is actually, it's the mindset and the culture that we're in at times.
I'm not going to contribute. I'm going to ask a question follow-up to both that concept of risk and comparative to your experience in the UK or with your global other R&D centres. How does Australia sit in our risk appetite generally?
So it's challenging to answer in the sense that we don't look at Australia separately. So from a CSL perspective, so we're working in a very high risk space when we're looking at preclinical drug discovery, and we know that probably 90% of what we do in that space is not going to succeed. But the 10% or less than 10% that does will be transformational. So it's high risk, high reward.
It's variable. I think some of it comes down with an academic point of view of how your institution helps you map your career out. So the university I came from had a promotion pathway that was innovation and enterprise, which actually ticked all the boxes for what we were just talking about. So it's sometimes it's very variable within country and across countries, but it's actually, I think what we have to do certainly here in Melbourne is go, this is good, and we will actually support your career development, whether you're a postdoc, you're a level A, a level B, or a professor, that actually your career can progress. But it's about the environment, because usually it's about career progression, because do we recognize that or not?
Very good. Is there any other question? Sorry, there one.
Thank you, Thas, and the panel for the great thoughts. I just have a quick question for following up with what Martha said about decades of experience, and I think Mark also touched on that. And also it actually relates to this listening and hearing, and what is the problem and what is the solution. For like an early or a mid-career researcher who doesn't have decades of experience, how do you, what is your advice there's that trust coming in, right? So what is your advice in how someone, like in an early career researcher, how should they approach? Because they don't have that decade of experience and they can't wait.
That's a great question. And I certainly don't want to give the impression that we only work with researchers who have been doing it for 40 years. That's absolutely not the case. In fact, many of the people that we work with are mid-career researchers. So really, I think it comes back to this active listening that Alistair talked about. It's really trying to understand what are the problems that industry is trying to solve, and then developing the solutions, obviously focused in your area, and then trying to find the channels that enable you to socialise that with industry. So, using the RIC office, for example, at the University of Melbourne, who has the networks to take you to potential investors or pharmaceutical partners or other industry partners for your particular area of research. So my advice would be, please don't be put off if you don't have decades of experience. It's passion, it's ideas, and it's being surrounded by an institution that has that experience that you're founding your research on.
Mark, do you have any?
I think it was well said. It's not about the decades of experience. It's about the mindset, the passion, the commitment, the resilience against the struggles that you go through, the curiosity to do something different, the belief in a higher order, bold outcome. It's all those things which I think attracts to want to work with people and researchers.
I'm trying to, as much as cover different questions, so please. Yeah. Is there any other questions? I have you on the Slido. Yeah.
Thank you for the great insight, panel. I think my question ties back to the divide part of the topic. I'm a bit confused with, we want to serve the community through innovation. And at the same time, as a geostatistician, I see the positive correlation between Silicon Valley and Houston, most innovative time in terms of share values, and the number of homeless people ratio in the US. Where do we miss that?
That's a great question, and that comes down. I think if you look at it from the Silicon Valley, it's where is the focus gone too deep and too narrow without looking at the wider context. So you can sometimes not see the wood for the trees. I'm going to use a poor analogy, and I think that comes down then to engaging with our community. So whether it be, if you look at the city of Melbourne, how we engage with our communities there, what are we doing? We get focused on innovation in terms of tech, which is what we've been talking about a lot today, but not solely. There's innovation in community service and driving change in community. If you look at the Melbourne, the Social Equity Institute, the work that they do, so Joe Barraquet's work, it's phenomenally life-changing because of what they're doing, the projects they're engaging in. So the work they're doing currently with Vic Market and the food waste there, and how that can be repurposed and how that can drive better change. I think as a university, the social focus that we should have, and the word social license is used a lot inappropriately, But the social responsibility that we have is to say, well, that innovation isn't just simply in tech; it's actually in community service and development. So certainly, we're not losing sight of that. And within those, if you look at the university's impact acceleration environments, government, social is a key one of those. And that's where we sit. But I think if you look at a number of the companies that are here, there's that element of social responsibility now with a lot of the companies that work within the city. And sometimes the element of we're probably missing on partnering in that area at the expense of others. But the Social Equity Institute and the other work that goes on with the cities of Melbourne, its centre, is one of the key things there. So it's about not missing the bigger picture, but it's a very, very good point, well made. And there's a lot we can learn probably from the Silicon Valley and West Coast US arguments and the situation.
I think it's great that you highlighted the entrepreneurship and innovation is not confined to commercial outcomes. It could be social entrepreneurship, but that's something that we need to pay attention to social issues as well.
The other good one there, Taz, is the new Robert Cripps Institute for Cultural Conservation, which is educational, it's research focused, but it's a virtuous circle. If you listen to Robin Sloggett talk, when she first spoke to me a year ago, she talked about the virtuous circle of the commercial bit of earning some money to put it back in, because what is that conservation doing? It's preserving culture. It's preserving culture for the benefit of the wider society. So that's the other really good example that the university has just started to really work through with Robin's leadership.
There's one here. Sorry, is there another one? Okay, no, that's
Thanks. A pleasure to hear the panel speak for tonight. This question goes out to Mark specifically. I'm currently doing an internship at Telstra. I'm part of the engineering team that gets to work on some exciting project in the software and AI sort of space. And it's good to talk to someone, kind of at the helm to see the attitude around this. I know that Telstra has made it clear that it's not, supposed to sell AI as a solution specifically, but still they're investing hundreds of millions of dollars into the technology, through partnerships such as the JV with Accenture, for example. So, I just want to see how on the executive side of things, like the attitude towards incorporating these AI into solutions, are you guys optimistic about pushing this field a bit more? Are you guys, are open to sort of exploring more customer-facing solution? And then if not, where do you see the best values for like the AI and sort of technology integration?
The executive team is really committed. It's a topic whenever the CEOlt, as we call it, the CEO and the direct reports, and anyone that comes to talk or present, it's a continuous topic. Are we doing enough? Are we going fast enough? What do we need to do more of? What are the use cases? What are we learning from it? How do we adopt the right skills? All the way through to, you would have heard us talk about network as a product and how we're trying to fundamentally think of what is a different product into the future that could help with AI in organisations. And there's continuous discussions, debates, but it's a top of mind topic. And at all levels of the organisation, I can assure it's driven from the top down to be very ambitious behind it. Happy to talk to you afterwards.
This question from the Slido, it's kind of in the spirit of earlier comment about how entrepreneurial companies are, how they are supporting innovation. I guess the question is, university, CSL, Telstra have significant procurement pipelines, and how you approach enabling innovation through your procurement strategies. Maybe Alastair, university.
How we enable. So I think one of the things that we're trying to do here and do well is developing an entrepreneurial mindset, which is thinking differently. And I had a bit of an idea when I came into this role that I wanted to have, I wouldn't say a floor on Melbourne Connect. I didn't want to be so greedy, but I wanted a space where we had what I called a talent incubator, which is just essentially a floor, not a small room, a floor where I could have undergraduates, honours students, PhD students, level Bs, all the way through level E, all coming in, plugging in, not with headphones on, but to come and share and be creative and learn from each other in that entrepreneurial space. You've done the TRAM program, you've been through all of that. and you're going to the next stage. Yes, we've got a good number of spin outs here, that entrepreneurial mindset, but and we've got space here for those startups. Where can I have a space for those that have just been through one of those programs? Where can we get? We've got a little bit of space over on the other side, but where can we have that space? And I think what we need at the university is this ability to connect, to be creative together and learn and bounce those ideas off, because that actually lights a big spark. And that leads into people being highly attractive to have conversations with our colleagues here. Because also what I found with those graduates that have gone through those programs, they also listen and they hear. And I'd love more of the students to go and more of our staff to go through that.
I love my academic colleagues who can twist the question and answer something else. But I like the way you landed. We like to curate the talent that actually required.
We have to curate the talent.
That's our procurement, all right? Maybe Martin, then yeah.
Sure. Look, procurement could mean different things to different people. So if I think about procurement, I'm thinking about it in the term of procuring ideas. And so what we're really trying to do is build a pipeline of innovation, a pipeline of opportunities that could ultimately move through the clinical development pathway and become medicines for patients. Similar to what you were saying, Alistair, through that process, we're working alongside our external partners. There is an upskilling and an exchange of ideas that happens through that process. So even if a project doesn't work out as intended, it's certainly not all lost. As you said, it's learning. And so people are coming out of that with an understanding of what it is that industry is looking for, that sort of industry mindset that we often talk about. They're thinking about it from the context of what's a viable commercial product. So there's talent development, there's generation of new ideas, and there are things that might not work out from the perspective of the areas that CSL is interested in, but we've still created value, and that value can then potentially be pivoted into another area, whether it's another disease in the case of a therapeutic, or opening a new area of research. And we've got actually multiple examples of that, where we've started working with an academic researcher in one area, and that area has failed, but it's opened a new door, and we're now working in a different area.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, we have innovation programs. We've just got mentioned a JV with Accenture. We do a lot with Infosys, some of our network providers. We do memorandums of understanding with large cloud providers. We do strong innovation with. I mean, there's probably a second lens out of this, and that's the rate and pace by which the technology is rapidly evolving and changing. So we're very cautious. How is it going to fit this piece of work into the rest of the technology landscape too, just in case we do need to pivot or change or it fails or whatever else. So that's probably the other second consideration.
Thank you. There's a lot more to explore, but the time is come to kind of reality. So I would like to wrap up this evening. Just as a way of wrapping up, really thank you for pointing out through questions and the panel sessions the accelerating pace in which we're moving, how we're adopting new technologies, new software technologies, which are able to be brought out very quickly, and then that kind of has a big impact on many companies, how they approach innovation. But I think we started by framing the panel session as a bridging the innovation divide, but I really like to see that as more of transitioning towards a cohesive innovation system where we find partners who can actually bridge across that divide and work and then actually bring innovative things, solutions to fruition. And I think it's very important that we leverage what existing network in terms of research, leading industry organizations, network who actually serve a large body of small to medium enterprises. So, and I think we intentionally brought a very diverse panel here who actually touches different part of the innovation just to kind of map out that challenge of bridging that gap. And as you can see here, many of these practitioners have been at the forefront of firing up collaborative partnerships and actually taking really key, a large number of innovations out to market and solutions. So really thank you, panel, for sharing your knowledge without any limits or filtering. And I think really it was very free-flowing conversations, and really appreciate your time. And I appreciate your time to turn up and hear, and I also pose some difficult questions for us to tackle. I really like, we always have really challenging questions to panelists, so I'm sure now you know why we go through the process of setting up these panel sessions. But again, thank you everyone for sharing your night with us, and I really enjoyed and looking forward to another event. But remember, the Innovation Week is not yet over. One more day of activity here in the first part of the Innovation Festival, so Melbourne Connect. There's a lot more programs still yet to be delivered, so thank you.